Like if,
Sorry, I just in case I forget, the course, it starts October 4th,
that's my plan.
and is it 8 p.m. till 9 p.m.?
It likely would be 7 to 9 about.
Oh, okay, okay.
That could be adjusted, but that's
Yeah,
I
yeah.
needed to at
Well,
least have a plan to start, and then with a plan to start, I can adjust it as we go. But
okay, okay.
if we need to adjust it to 7:30 to 9:30, we could potentially do that. There are some times that like we've done this before where it's like sometimes it's better to do earlier in the day, like say, hey, this week 3 people can't come from 7 to 9. Let's do it at 1 to 3.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
okay.
that potentially we could do. But I needed to actually put a time down, to start. So that's what we did. So it gives us time to like the people who are at my house to eat dinner, kind of have some fellowship after dinner, and then come on together. So that
Yeah, yeah.
works. But yeah, so I'm recording this because there are a couple people that said they couldn't make it tonight. So just kind of want to, I'll send it on to them afterward. But welcome to Essentials of Sound Doctrine, which is our fall leadership kind of course through through the Antioch School. The Antioch School is a church-based, um, like accredited seminary out of the States. What they do is they do in-situation ministry training. And the idea is instead of having you leave your church, your community, your ministry, your job to go to seminary, what they do is they worked primarily with guys like Walter Kaiser, Gordon Conwell Seminary, some guys from Moody Bible Institute, to deliver theological training um, to people who want to do ministry training but remain in their situation. So it's really helpful for people who are going to be elders of churches, for people who would be church planters, for people who would be missionaries, or just for anybody who wants to kind of develop their ministry thinking. The other part of this is it's a Paul Timothy type of seminary education. So if you're doing the program, if you're doing the actual seminary program, what that would mean is actually you'd have a mentor who would be kind of mentoring you in the ministry, not just in the courses, but in kind of life and ministry, and that's how the program is created. So, for example, I've got a guy that I was mentoring at OCBC. His name is Adam. He was my right hand man for I don't know, like the whole time I was at OCBC, and now that I'm stepped aside from that ministry, he's actually the one leading the congregation until they do bring a new pastor. It was actually through the Antioch School and just kind of working out his calling where he realized he doesn't feel he's vocationally called to be a pastor, but he really feels called to be an elder. And so that's what he's doing. He's kind of shepherding the church, while they're still looking for a full-time vocational pastor. But him coming out of this course, these seminaries, it's not just that he's shown theological refinement, it's also that he has participated in every ministry of the church that's even possible. Like he's preached once a month. He served on our church board for 6 years. He he's taught kids Sunday school, junior high Sunday school. He's led worship. He's done everything in ministry that you can do in our church. And then he's doing his theological training while he's doing that. Whereas for me, I went away for 7 years at Bible college and seminary. I actually left my community. I actually was separated from I had no mentor. I did it all on my own. And so that's the difference that what the Antioch School, they do is they bring in situation seminary education, seminary level education to us in the churches where we don't have to leave our spots to go and do that. Um, you can do these courses for a number of different like credits. For most of you in here, I think right now at least, you'll just be auditing this course. What auditing means is you don't get any credit for it. You are just simply taking the course for your own theological development and ministry refinement. So that means, yeah, you can put in as much of this into as much of this course as you want, and you'll get out of it what you put into it for sure. But it might just mean that you do some of the readings and you participate in the discussions. Okay, Matt is taking this course for his certificate of ministry that he's going to be turning into a master's of ministry. So Matt not only has to do all the readings, doesn't have to prepare to be part of our discussion. Matt's actually writing projects about, he writes 5 projects during this course, where he actually turns them in first to me, and I look them over and we talk, through what can be refined, and then we send them to Iowa where he gets his credit. And so that's how he does this. This is one of 8 courses that compose. Sorry, this is one of 4 courses that compose a certificate of ministry at a master's level, but a certificate. And then there are 4 more courses that Matt is doing, which would comprise his master's of ministry. So I think for right now, though, for most of you, it'll just be auditing. But if you are interested in potentially someday applying and being part of the Antioch School in a formal way, one of the things you might want to do and consider is to start actually doing those projects right now. And I'd be happy to look through them and see what you've written, even if you're not turning them in for credit yet. But that's kind of how the seminary works. The seminary is in a box, in a sense. They send it to me. So it's not done through video as far as like a video from a teacher out in Ames, Iowa. What it is we get these binders here that look like this. They're very thick, you can see. And basically, instead of, when I went to seminary, basically my professor gave me a reading list. Instead of giving you a reading list of here's 10 books to read, what they do is they went through a number of books and said these are valuable articles or chapters of those books, and they put them all in this binder for you. There are some additional books in this course, and I'll talk about them in a second. But basically, I'm a certified mentor, and so I lead you through the discussions that we need to have in order for you to get clarity in your mind around these issues that we'll be discussing. So that's a little bit of how this works. So the course generally is like a college course, college graduate level course. We generally follow the college or the university timeline. So I usually try to do 1 course a semester, and it's usually about 12 weeks. We're starting a little bit late, so I'm going to try to condense it a little bit so we're done by Christmas. But if we have to bleed into that week between Christmas and New Year's, we'll see, and we'll see how we do. So that's kind of how I operate these things, because I'd like to start the next course sometime in January, but we might need to bleed into that. But we'll see how we do. We'll see how we're cruising along as we go. And there's a crash above me. Yeah, I think that's good for right now. Any questions on that so far? Cool.
Oh, so you said it's 12 weeks, like maximum 12 weeks, I guess?
Around then. I'm going to try to finish by Christmas is basically what I'm saying here, is how we'll try to do it. Because of Zoom, like it's also kind of both hybrid of in-person and online. So if you're in Ottawa, you're welcome to come to my place and to do this in person. It's kind of nice to have some discussion happening in person, but otherwise you're welcome to Zoom online anytime you're not able to make it in person here. So that's fine. Also, yeah, there will be, I'm asking, unless you're part of our church network, I'm asking for so the cost. So there is a materials fee. I have a couple of binders available, so depending on who needs them, I could loan a binder to you. Because I think I have maybe 3 or 4 of these binders hanging around. We can borrow them from OCBC if needed. These binders are about $100 Canadian. And so I will need to see if I need to order you a binder and get it sent to you. We'll put a bulk order in so we don't have to pay as much shipping, to come together. And so the binder's about $100. There are some extra books for this course that are cheap. Like one of them is $5.99 on Kindle, I believe, so that's not a huge cost. But there may be some extra books you want to buy, or as well. I have a couple that I could put on loan. And then I am actually, if you're not part of our city church, I'm actually doing something new this year because I am a missionary now. I don't have a salary uh, that we haven't gotten completely in. And somebody was kind of rebuking me for this, saying, well, if you're going to be training people who are not part of your direct ministry, then you should probably um, ask for some help and assistance. So I'm actually asking for a $50 instructor fee this time as well. So I haven't done it before, but it is kind of like, okay, well, this is my time. I'm investing in you. I'm investing my time into you. And I had a mentor, kind of a friend, kind of say, well, you know, um, you should be compensated for your time. So I was like, okay, well, we'll see how that goes. And so I'm asking for $50 instructor fee for the, you know, many hours I'll be putting in. If you're part of our city church, this is what we use to train our leaders. And so, so I'm not, this is that you guys are my ministry. So um, I'm not looking for that. But if you'd like to donate, I can, I'll take that through my donation. I'll take it through my missionary. It'll be funneled through my missionary. So it'll also be a gift in that way. Henry, you didn't hear that because you're a CRA person. I'm not supposed to receive gifts by giving services.
That's right, because that's a gift in kind. And
so
that's against the law.
I'm not requiring it. It is a gift if you would please to give it. How about that? Is that better, Henry?
That's okay. If it's
Okay,
just a gift.
So, okay. Anything else I need to say about the? So, okay. So just the structure, because some of you guys are new and never done a course like this before. Every week, I'll have a unit. I will give you. There will be some readings. There will be some scripture readings. There will be some readings. I can send you guys the reading list, and then we're going to have about a 2-hour discussion about the readings. So there is some preparation. Again, if you're not able to do all the readings on a given week, that's fine. I'd rather have you show up for the discussion, but having read half the readings than not show up at all. And but I would, you know, it'd be great if you could try to read each of the things you're required. There are what we call advanced readings and basic readings. I guess it's just, I don't know what they call the non-advanced, but there are some advanced readings. You don't all have to read the advanced readings. If a couple people read the advanced readings, that's great. If you're doing your masters, if you plan on or think about doing your masters like Matt's doing, then you should do the advanced readings. So, yep.
I just want to just a good example. So in the course that we just did previously, Henry and I had some really good, respectful discussion that helped push both of us and everybody else in the class to a deeper understanding of the heart of an issue. So we were both looking at the same issue from a different perspective, and we were able to get deeper into the heart of Christ as a result. So my encouragement is, if we are able to put the time into doing the readings, that makes for much more lively discussion.
Sorry.
Yeah, that makes for much more lively discussion, because quite often, in my experience, the readings take us to a certain place, but the whole direction and the whole emphasis of this type of learning is to go that step further through Socratic discussion and group conversation. So I think we can really all get something and learn from each other and gain a greater understanding if we put that time in. It really helps. Thanks.
Cool. I'm just going to share some things with you guys so you can kind of see a little bit of what this course is about. The course is called Understanding the Essentials of Sound Doctrine. The idea of the course is, so the basic idea of what we're trying to do here is we want to try to understand, number one, the concept of sound doctrine, the concept of building our lives and our churches around the apostles' teaching. So in order to do that, we have to, number one, define what is this concept of sound doctrine. Number two, what goes into, like what goes under this category? What are it says the essentials of sound doctrine. So what are the core teachings, the core of the Christian faith that we need to ground our churches and our lives around? How do we articulate that core? How do we defend that core teaching? How do we disciple others in our movement in that core teaching? So those are the basic questions we're asking. Is in these courses we're always going toward how do we practically implement this in our church movements and in our lives? So it's not just that this is not just an intellectual exercise of determining, of defining what sound doctrine is. It's actually moving from that definition into articulation and into propagation, which is how do we teach and train others. Along with that, so that's what we're seeking to do, and we're going to do that in two different ways. One way we're going to do this is by surveying crisis moments in church history. So we're going to look, so in one way we're going to do this through historical theology. Historical theology is trying to understand how or what the church sought to articulate and defend and propagate in each generation. And so we're going to be looking, number one, first during the apostolic era. That'll be our first kind of data point. Secondly, we're going to go through the church fathers, where they were defining orthodoxy, and that would be through writing the apologists, the writings of the apologists. It would be through the church councils and creeds. Thirdly, would be at the moment of the Reformation. So seeing how they basically they were recovering sound doctrine during the Reformation, the writings of the reformers. And the fourth period would be the fourth period would be modern evangelicalism. And how have we in modern evangelicalism been articulating and defending the faith and actually kind of going beyond kind of modern Western evangelicalism, how we're doing this, how can we better do this worldwide? We're facing an unprecedented global expansion of the church right now. In our day and age, the church has expanded at a rate that we haven't seen since the first centuries into Asia and into Africa and into India and into South America. And yet a lot of these movements are not well grounded in sound doctrine. So actually the organization that is behind the Antioch School, what they do is they actually work with many of these movements in the global south to stabilize those movements and to ground them in sound doctrine. That's their purpose of existence, to be honest. So does
this course follow specifically Western theology, or does it look into Eastern theology as well? Because sometimes they differentiate quite a bit.
Actually, that's a great question, Henry. That'll lead me to a segue into a book that you're going to want to read. It's actually a really good book, and it's one of the books for this course. It's called Christian Thought Revisited by a church historian named Justo Gonzalez. Justo Gonzalez is one of the top church historians. He's well regarded. He has a multi-volume set of Christian thought where he goes through church history. And then he wrote a book. It's a shorter book called Christian Thought Revisited that we use in this course. What he does in that book, Henry, is he actually surveys Eastern Christianity, African Christianity, and Western Christianity. And what he does is he recognizes that even from the era of the church fathers, there was a common orthodoxy, but a distinct and diverse perspective.
Yes.
So he contrasts the Alexandrian school, that was the North African school, the Alexandrian school, the Antiochian school, which would be the Syrian school, and the Roman school. And what he does is actually he traces these strands of Christian thought through church history, and actually he does actually speak to Eastern Christianity, Western Christianity, and African Christianity through those lenses. And it's a fascinating book. And actually, without a spoiler alert here, the seminary is literally called the Antioch School of Church Planting and Leadership Development. And so they're saying there's something about this Antiochian Christianity that that had something to it. I'm not going to spoil it right now. That we've actually that we actually need to recover in the West. Not saying we're going to become Eastern Orthodox. No, not at all. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about that in Antioch there was a school of thought and a school of hermeneutics
Yes.
that actually we would do well to recover. So so actually, yeah, to your answer, Henry, I went on a long extended discussion about it, but yeah, we're actually taking a globalist view of the Christian faith here. We will obviously, as we're tracing things through the Reformation and into modern evangelicalism, there will be like an emphasis there on how the church actually came to us in the West. But yeah, so that is built into because and remember it's because this material that they're writing for a globalist Christianity. So it is important to recognize the contributions of church fathers and theologians from Africa, from Asia.
Yes. Just further to that, I'm sorry I forgot the author's name of the book. What is his background?
And Gonzalez, I
Yes.
believe he's a Pentecostal from Cuba.
Pentecostal. Okay.
I believe so.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I believe that is his faith tradition, but he's a scholar of church history.
Okay.
Justo Gonzalez, but he's Cuban. I know that.
He's a revolutionary.
No, I don't think so. Okay, so that was one. So one way we're looking at church history, or one way we're looking at this idea of sound doctrine, is seeing in church history how the faith has been articulated and defended, and that will then lead us. We're not just doing that so that we can learn names and dates. When I took a church history course in seminary, it was about learning the names and dates, and it was one of the driest courses that I took. Right? Although there were some things, actually, I shouldn't say that because it also brought me to tears at times because I'd read writings of the church fathers and their reflections on the Trinity, their reflections on the incarnation. And so I won't say it's dry because theology, if it's bringing you into a greater knowledge of the holy, theology can't be dry, right? Like, it truly can't. But we're not, because we're not talking about names and dates and places here. What we want to be doing is observing in each one of those transitionary periods in church history. We want to be asking, how did the church recover this sound doctrine? How did they defend it? And how did they pass it on? And the point is that we have to do that reflection in ourselves. We have to actually ask ourselves and ask not just ourselves individually, but ourselves as the church. In our day and age, how are we going to stand for sound doctrine? How are we going to defend it? And how are we going to pass it on? So this whole course is to get you to think that way. The second kind of approach we're going to take, and I'm adding this in a sense to the course, is a systematics approach. So I do want, you are going to, by the end of this course, if you were taking it for credit, and what I hope you do even if you're auditing it, you should by the end of this course be able to write your own statement of faith and your own statement of Christian practice. Right? So I want you to think through your own statement of faith, your own doctrinal statement. We're going to do that. We're going to lead you through that together in a systematic way. So I would actually like you to potentially read a book on systematics as well. The book that I would ask those who are in our City Church network is called Gospel Truths. It's the theological expansion of the Statement of Faith of the Free Church of Canada. It's a place to start. And even if you're not part of our church movement, this is a really good book. And it's not just because I'm ordained in this denomination. It is one of the best books, best systematic theologies I have seen that that tries to wade through this question of how do we get to the core of our faith and what things are we able to debate but not divide over, and what things must we divide over, without bogging you down into the nuances of every theological position. Some systematic theologies, most systematic theologies are 1,000 pages long, 2,000 pages long. This, in a very concise way, speaks to the heart of our faith. Now, you may not agree or disagree with everything that's in it, but it's a good jumping off place to start your reflection. That's what I have found. If you're in our church network, like Matt, if you're seeking ordination, Matt's going to actually have to write his reflection on this statement of faith if he seeks ordination or ordination with our denomination. And so, Matt, I'm going to have you do this. There is an Alistair McGrath book in the material that that this book can kind of replace. So that's the systematic level of that. And Matt, what I would suggest to you, Matt, would be on top of what you're doing in preparing for this course each week. Our statement of faith in our denomination is 10 points. So I would take 10 weeks, and each week focus on one of the statements.
Sure.
And that way that will help you in writing, so that it doesn't become overwhelming where you're doing all your reflection at once.
No, I've actually read through this book already, so yes, that'll be fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I might do is I might just at the beginning of every course, every class, I might just read and reflect a little bit on it as well, because it is kind of good to kind of help us get into it a little bit from a systematics perspective. If you have a systematic theology textbook that you prefer or that you already have been interested in reading, you can talk to me about it, and it's fine because you're just auditing it. Go ahead and do it if you're doing that. So
Yeah, I have several, but is there any that you recommend?
I recommend this one.
Yeah, but that's like sort of a top level. It's not digging deep down into some of the theological
Yeah,
issues.
if you want to go deeper into systematics, if you want to go deeper, I mean, I know some of you guys have recommended Burkhoff. You can go all the way into Institutes, Christian Religion. If you want to go Calvinist, you can go Grudem. I think, Henry, you'd like Grudem, either his shorter one or his longer one. In the sense of he does approach things. Grudem's kind of like a charismatic with a seatbelt,
Right.
and he'd be a really good one. I mean, Grudem I highly recommend. It's very readable.
I have Louis Sperry Schaefer's multi-volume.
Oh yeah, Schaefer
systematic.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he's
that's
very
going to
good.
be a very dispensational one.
Yeah.
Which would be good. Somebody asked me about MacArthur has a new one. I know that won't be the one you would want reading, Henry, but MacArthur's got a new 1,000-page one that people said is really good.
Charles Ryrie has a good one that I have.
Yeah, I stay away from Ryrie, but that's okay. Some people like him.
Okay. Beeson has a good one that I have as well.
Decent, yeah. I have a bunch downstairs as well.
Okay.
But yeah, I like the readable ones for a course like this because systematics is only one part of our focus, so
Right.
something readable would be helpful for here.
Okay.
And what I like about Grudem too is he's got his big one, and then he wrote, I think I forget what his big one's called, but then he wrote another one called like Bible Doctrines, and it's an edited kind of version as well.
I read through Grudem's first systematic theology course that I did at Heritage, and I found it very easy, very very easy to understand. That was the one they used. Erickson would also be. Grudem quotes Erickson quite a lot in his book. That might be one too.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me just show you what the courses will look like here, just so you can see an overview, and then I'm hoping we can go pretty soon. Sorry, I wanted to get this within 40 minutes. So yeah, so you can see each unit we're looking at apostolic depositive sound doctrine to the churches, preserving the apostolic faith in the early church, preserving the apostolic faith through the centuries, preserving the apostolic faith in contemporary culture, and then building an apostolic belief framework and culture. So this last unit is always like taking what we've done and trying to think about what does this look like in my life and in my churches? How am I going to apply it? So those are the kind of courses you can see. This is it's a 15-week course, but I try to combine it and try to push us a little bit to get it a little bit done quicker. If we do 15 weeks, it's going to take us to the end of January. So we'll see. Sometimes I do Unit 5. I often do Unit 5 together as one thing, and we do like maybe a 3-hour workshop for Unit 5, because like how do we take this and make it practical? So I usually try to get up through Unit 4 in 10 weeks, and then we do the Unit 5 together. Um, the reading list, as you can see, I don't know how many of the authors you're familiar with. A lot of them, well, William Wells and Gonzalez, and there are a lot of church historians. Not so many. It's mainly historical theology that we're going to be doing. So it's going to be mainly church historians, early church historians that we're reading. There's another book. Sorry, so 3 books that are suggested additions. One book is the Justo Gonzalez book. One book is a systematic theology book. Either McGrath's is what's recommended in the text, or I recommend Gospel Truths. The third book is Creeds and Confessions of the Reformation. It's all primary source documents. Well, in English, so translated. You don't have to learn German and French to read Calvin and Luther in this course. You can read them in English. But so that's Creeds and Councils of the Creeds and Confessions of the Reformation by, I think that's by, I forget who that's by. It might be on this next page here. Oh no, what happened here? My thing froze up. Oh, there it is. Okay, so just so you can see what generally a course looks like, or what a unit looks like, I should say. We don't need to get into this. We can do that next time. So basically, in this for this first unit, we have a lot of readings. So basically, you'll get, for like, say in 2 weeks from now, you'll get a group of scripture readings. Now, you're not trying to do a complete exegetical, full inductive Bible study on each one of these passages. What you'd want to do is you'd want to look at the questions that are being raised in the Socratic discussion. And so read over the questions first and then go into the scriptural text. Because generally you're looking in the scriptures to answer specific questions you're trying to raise. So this first one is, what this is actually doing is actually trying to make you do a couple different word studies on these words. Tradition, so notice how Paul uses this idea of traditions or instructions in Paul's early letters. How does he use this idea of attitudes, patterns, or rules in his early and middle letters? How does he speak about sound doctrine and principles words in his later letters? And how do they speak about it in the general epistles, Peter and Jude? So you begin to notice this idea of there's patterns of speech that are being employed, and that's what we want to. So they kind of want you to do a word study on these patterns of speech for the first unit. You'll see like there's different readings. So you'd come to the class having read Dodd on Preaching and Teaching the Early Church. And if you want to do the advanced reading, so this is, see, it says that it's advanced. So if you want to do the advanced reading, you would also read Giles, The Content of Christian Teaching. When we get together, we basically unpack. I'm going to probe you into these Socratic discussion questions. And for the first unit, so you don't actually need to worry about the projects. Only Matt right now really needs to worry about the projects. But even the projects, Matt, you're more concerned about your competencies rather than the projects, and you know that. Basically, the projects, if you guys want to know what the projects are for this whole course that Matt has to do, is as we talk about the early creeds and Didache manuals of the early church, Matt is supposed to write in a creedal statement and like a Didache manual. And then as we talk about the confessions and the catechisms of the Reformation, Matt is supposed to write his statement of faith now, again, as a confession statement or as a catechism statement. And then as we go later on into evangelicalism, we talk about statements of faith. Matt is going to write his statements of faith and his thoughts on how you would disciple people in the Christian way of life. So those are the projects that Matt will be doing. For the rest of you, I think if you could get out of this course where you are basically coming to a sounder articulation of what you believe to be the core doctrine of the church. And when we look at that word doctrine, as we're going to find out next week or in 2 weeks, it's not just the things we must believe, but it's also the practice by which we must live. That might be a new concept for us. But my hope for you guys and for all of you would be, as you go through this course, you'd be able to understand what are the central principles of the faith, sound doctrine, so that in your church movements, in your churches, in your ministry, those are the things you emphasize. Those are the things you focus on. It says, actually, the reading out, I don't have my Bible with me right here, but one of the things that is spoken about again and again in 1 Timothy and in Titus, when Paul's writing to these church establishers, Timothy and Titus, one of the things he says again and again is that they shouldn't devote themselves into speculative theology. They're not devote themselves into myths, to endless genealogies. They're not to devote themselves into disputing matters over words. Like, Paul wants them to focus on the core of the faith and to not let these other controversies distract them from focusing on the core of our faith. And you know and I know we can get so distracted into debating minutiae of theology. Well, that's not helpful necessarily for building up the church and sound doctrine. How do we build up the church and sound doctrine? How do we actually steer young believers away from these disputable matters of, speculative theology, and how do we steer them to the core? And I have to tell you guys, it is like shepherding, because people want to wander into the esoteric stuff. People want to wander into the disputable, like that. Generally, people wander into that stuff. It's rare that you find people that are like, I'm just really, really, really excited about the incarnation of Christ. It's like, that's what we're looking for. Who's excited about the incarnation of Christ? Who's excited about these core doctrines of the church that we've defended for millennia? Because those are the things that matter. So, and one of the big things that you're going to find in any, as you do any ministry, is that, okay, well, I have my core and you have your core. What if those cores don't match? Right? What if we define the core differently? So that's one of the questions we're going to have to wrestle through here as well. But I think that's good as far as I think everything I needed to say to you guys. If you are still after this not scared away from what I just told you, if you still interested to be working through this at whatever level you're able to, we are hoping to start in 2 weeks on October 4th. And I will send you, if you email me or send me a chat right now or text me, if you say, hey man, I'd like to at least start and be in, what I'll do is I'm going to photocopy that first sheet so you can kind of know what you kind of need to prepare for our first discussion. I also then will be writing back to you to kind of discuss, okay, I might have a binder for you. I might be able to find a binder for you. Otherwise I might need to order some material from the States, and who knows when that will get here. So I'd like to try to put those orders in as quickly as I can, so that we can get them. It generally takes a week and a half, 2 weeks for them to come on a good day. So yeah, I guess any question about, I guess that was me running through things pretty quickly, and if you're not familiar with how these courses run, it might have just been like way over your head, or but yeah, if you have any questions about other things, the content of the course or structure of the course, please to answer any questions you might have. Wow, crickets.
I know at one point there was talk about the Antioch School putting these manuals online. Has there been any movement towards that yet, or is it still all in binders?
There is movement on that. I ask them that every single time we talk. Like I literally do. Probably not moving on this until next summer.
Okay.
So
if we purchase the binder, is there any option of us then being able to get the online information?
it's a good question. Well, I mean, So Matt, you don't get access to all these on the library, do you?
No, I don't.
No. I'm not sure, Henry. That's a good question.
Okay.
I don't know how to answer that because that's
Yeah, it'd be something interesting to at least request and or ask them to think about, because I know there are other books or Bibles and stuff like that if you buy the hard copy, you get access to the online version as well. So
I think it could, but then they would have to try to figure out like how do they connect right now because I'm just putting an order in for you.
right,
It might have to be like they would have to know that this is connected to you. So what's kind of cool is because I'm a program administrator, I actually get access to everything online.
yes,
So so that's kind of cool. But Matt actually, because Matt's doing his certificate of ministry, so I actually get all this online, but it's in beta. And they say
right.
actually at some point they're going to release this to or other people, and you can buy the materials online
Each
that way.
manual. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so so it's in beta for me, um, but I don't know when they're going to um, make this open to others. And the other thing is, Maxime, they actually are available in French as well. So if you were interested in a French translation, you could let me know. I don't know if you like French or English for these sort of things.
No, I'm good with I'm happy with English. I'm better with English.
You going to bed, buddy?
Yeah,
Joshua,
that's the difference is that
are you going to bed?
there's actually French in these
Okay,
things.
go this way.
Oh,
Come
Lars.
on, come
All
on.
right, cool then.
Okay.
Can you
Um,
send out that reading list, Dan, that you suggest, so that we can at least look into getting those books as well?
oh, getting those other books, yeah. And I'll
Yeah.
talk again at the OCBC Church Library.
Hmm.
So the OCBC Church Library has a number of different systematics and things like that. So I know we have at least one or two. Adam's got a copy of the Gonzalez book. So I know we have a couple copies of the Gonzalez book floating around. Um, I have the creeds and catechisms of the early church book, but actually most of that stuff is online. Like I can,
Okay.
before we go to that week, I usually tell people not to buy that book because it's like before we go into that week and I say, hey, read either the Reform London, the London, what's that called, 1689. So I'll be like, read either 1689, read the Westminster Confession, or read what's the other big one? Synod of Dort. Is that it, or is that the Catholic one? No, the Trent is the Catholic one. So Westminster, yeah. So like before that week, I'll say like, hey, read one of these three confessions and read Luther's Small Catechism or read Calvin's Catechism or whatever. So you get the idea. You can choose which one you
Yeah.
want to read, and you can just find it online, and that will give you the idea of the form and of what sorts of things were being debated at the time. So I generally say don't buy that one because that stuff is freely. It's just primary source documents you can get on the internet very easily.
Very good.
So, yeah, I'll send out for anybody who's interested. I'll photocopy a couple pages for you guys for the kind of the breakdown of the units and then the breakdown of the readings and things like that. So I'll send a couple of those things to you guys. Any other
Sounds good.
questions? Cool. And we may be joined by some other people as well who are not able to come here tonight. So I'm hoping that there'll be a couple more. But yeah, that's it. Unless there's any other thoughts, questions, concerns, comments. Anybody want to say their favorite theologian? Don't. No. I follow Paul. I follow Apollos. I follow Cephas. All right. Cool. Well, Loris, did I make you miss bedtime, Loris? All right. If there's no other questions, I'll let you guys go. All right.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
You're all muted, so I can't. So, anyway, cool. Thanks. And if you have a friend or somebody you know that might be interested in this, invite them along. It'd be wonderful. Yep.
Thank you.
Cool. Have a good night.
Okay. God bless. Bye bye.
Hey.
Yo, are they
So
still?
I'm gonna probably head over
Oh, wait,
with
I'm gonna
Ileani.
stop.